the budget. Now, many Republicans in this body have used the bridges to nowhere. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. Many members of this body has used this as an example of wasteful spending. My colleague and friend from Texas, Mr. Neugebauer, stated that while some earmarks fund worthy projects, there's some, such as the infamous Bridge to Nowhere, that are wasteful uses of taxpayer money, end quote. My friend from Indiana, Mr. Pence, said all spending bills passed in 2007 included 11,000 earmarks. Those earmarks included wasteful spending for items such as a $20 million ferry in Alaska benefiting 40 people. That, of course, followed the infamous Bridge to Nowhere from the 2005 highway bill, end quote. So here we have a wasteful expenditure that not only had its origin as an earmark, but has been used by fiscal hawks from both sides of the aisle as the very example of a wasteful earmark. If Alaska wants to build a bridge to nowhere, or a road to nowhere, or a road to somewhere, a bridge to somewhere, go ahead and do it. Just do it without federal tax dollars. My colleague, Mr. Walberg from Michigan, said taxpayers are tired of their hard-earned money paying for things like a bridge to nowhere in Alaska, fruit fly research in France, and a hippie museum in New York. Well, this bill doesn't fund a fruit fly museum in France or a hippie museum, but unless we act by passing this amendment, it will allow $183 million of taxpayer money to be spent for bridges for nowhere, wasteful spending we can't afford. Despite claims that the Bridge to Nowhere earmarks were eliminated, Alaska has spent over $71 million of federal money. You know, in 2006, when the Republicans lost their majority and entered the minority, Mr. Canner, the leader, said, "Republicans have become a party of the Bridge to Nowhere." Well, Mr. Speaker, it looks like too little has changed. And unless this amendment passes, the Republicans once again will become a party lost on the Bridge to Nowhere. This motion rescinds all remaining funds, about $183 million, provided for the planning, design, and construction of the two bridges under Safety Lou. In addition, the amendment prohibits the use of the funds. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. Gentleman may proceed.
This is a very simple choice. There's no politics in this. We're not changing other parts of the bill, trying to catch people up. We're not putting up a vote to trap people for 30-second spots to say they're for pornography like has been done in previous sessions while the bill is gutted elsewhere. What we're simply providing is a clean vote on the Bridge to Nowhere. According to the CBO, this motion will reduce the deficit by $160 million by eliminating funding for these two bridges, nothing else. Listen, for us to have the credibility as a Congress to make the tough cuts we need to balance the budget, to work together to pass a CR that cuts spending, to reduce spending in future years, Congress must have moral standing. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman is correct. Gentleman may proceed.
Continuing to provide funding to be used for these bridges, the infamous Alaska bridges to nowhere, which most Americans like me thought were already dead, is not the way for Congress to build trust with the American people. So we have a choice today. We can vote to...
The House will be in order. Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a choice. We can vote to continue these most egregious earmarks, or we can stand by our words, our vows, and our values and vote for this amendment and finally put an end to wasteful spending and pet projects. Let me close with some words of wisdom from my colleague from West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito. Quote, "The days of members slipping in the Bridge to Nowhere in the dead of night are over," end quote. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to shine the light of day.
Gentleman's time has expired.
On this insidious example of pork, remove it from the bill and pass the amendment. I yield back the balance of my time.
What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
I rise in opposition to the motion to recommit.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, congratulations, my colleagues. Welcome to the era of smoke and mirrors. And that's exactly what this motion to recommit is, and I urge its defeat. And you heard the gentleman describing bridges, and he, again, is trying to mislead the entire House on this particular motion to recommit. It is smoke and mirrors, and I urge the defeat of the motion to recommit.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. The motion.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request the ayes and the nays.
Does the gentleman ask for a recorded vote?
Yes.
Recorded vote is requested. Those in favor of a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the Chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for electronic vote on the question of passage. This is a 15-minute vote.
A procedural vote related to a bill to extend transportation programs for the rest of fiscal 2011, including federal highway aid, mass transit, and safety programs. More about federal spending during this vote. The Senate today sent President Obama a stopgap funding bill that funds the federal government through March 18th and cuts $4 billion from the fiscal 2011 budget. This is supposed to give the House, Senate, and the White House time to reach agreement on the spending for the rest of fiscal 2011 and avoid a government shutdown. Jonathan Allen of Politico was on Washington Journal this morning talking about what happens if the government shuts down.
Back to the impact of past government shutdowns, when you take a look at what CRS put together for what happened with agencies, it says that the CDC ceased to monitor diseases and toxic waste cleanup stopped at 609 sites. National parks, museums, monuments, as you said, closed, resulting in a loss of 9 million visitors. Law enforcement training and hires suspended. Processing bankruptcy and child support cases were delayed. 200,000 applicants for U.S. visas were unprocessed, and multiple services for veterans were curtailed. It also had an impact on federal contracts to the tune of about $3.7 billion. What happens, who decides which agency officials are essential? How do they go about deciding who's going to work, who's not, and who's going to get paid?
Well, it's an important distinction there. I mean, depending on the level of shutdown, certainly if an agency is already funded, it's not the case this year, but in some years, some of the appropriations bills have gone forward, so those agencies are able to operate.
And many say that that's a big difference between 95 and 96 and what we're facing now, because half of those appropriations bills were already passed in 95, 96, right, and none of them are passed this time around.
So the Pentagon, for instance, is now getting its money in 2-week chunks, which is probably not a good way to plan for a department, the Pentagon, that has so much responsibility for our safety and for 2 ongoing wars, or at least the wrap-up of one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan. And so it is a huge difference between 95 and 96 and now, that some of the government was funded. A good portion of the government was funded back then. I can't remember exactly which set of bills had gone through. I assume defense had, because that's usually one of the first ones. And then now what you're seeing is, I think, and to your question, you're going to see a lot of tough decision-making by agency heads, ultimately by political appointees in the Obama administration, as to who is absolutely essential to keep the government running, to keep the public safe. And what it ends up being more than anything, I mean, unless you have a very long shutdown, is a pain somewhere that isn't often talked about on C-SPAN. You know, I mean, it's difficult for smaller agencies to handle a brief interruption in their money, for people who rely on government grants that, you know, were supposed to come through on a certain date and they have to get pushed back. For government employees who don't make that much money, I mean, some of them make decent money, but for those at the lower end who are really living hand to mouth, for them to be out of a paycheck for 2, 3, 4 weeks, it can affect their rent. It becomes a problem at sort of all levels, and you're talking about a few million people who work for the federal government. So all of that is problematic. There are some potential safety issues, as you noted, CDC not monitoring diseases, but I think that they do their best to make decisions about what's necessary and what's not necessary. In a lot of cases, you're going to end up seeing people work without pay. Certainly on Capitol Hill, they're moving in that direction. If there's a shutdown, Congress would not get paid during it under a bill that the Senate's considering today, I believe, or maybe they passed it yesterday, but that's moving forward in the Congress.
Because currently, according to CRS, under current law, you cannot volunteer for federal service. In other words, you have to get paid if you're going to be working.
Right, but it's interesting so that you need that change in law for that to be able to happen. Now, congressional aides and you know, contrary to a lot of popular belief, congressional aides, administration aides actually work really long hours. You know, most of them. I'm married to to a congressional aide, and I can you know vouch for the longer than 8-hour day that she works every day. So these folks are used to working under less than ideal conditions. They're working in the Capitol right now, as some folks are saying, let's not pay them. let's shut down the government. Let's make our lives harder. But they go to work every day, and so you know, these are professionals, people who believe in public service, and I think in a lot of cases you will see them, even if they're not technically working for the federal government at a given moment, you'll end up seeing a lot of work get done.
All right, we'll go to Corey, an independent caller in Bozeman, Montana. Morning.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Just giving a call this morning. I was going to chime in on it. Basically, I think this started January 1st, 1994. Still lingering effects from it. 95, 96 when that was all due to it, I believe. And then it just keeps on building. You know, it paved the way for free trade with China. It's paved the way for free trade with other countries. And trading with China and some of these other countries is like trading with a shady drug dealer on the corner at 2 in the morning. It's just, it doesn't work right.
All right. We'll go to Brenda, a Republican in North Hero, Vermont. What do you think?
I'd like to know why some of these wealthier countries that we protect could not pay us for our services.
All right. That was Brenda, a Republican in North Hero, Vermont. We're talking about past government shutdowns and the impact of that. Derek, a Democrat in Baltimore, Maryland. Go ahead.
Good morning. It just, you know, it really tickles me when I hear Republicans, because, you know, Republicans only want to talk about what they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about what got us here. They don't want to talk about 8 years of Ronald Reagan. They don't want to talk about 8 years of George Bush. And if you put their deficits that they accumulated together, it was probably up to about, it probably counts for at least 85 to 90% of the national deficit. The House Speaker back then, Newt Gingrich, he called himself such a smart guy, as Hannity likes to call him, but he did such a terrible job that his own party made him step down. And Jim Boehner seems to be going along in the same course as him, because this, you know.
Speaker John Boehner, the caller is referring to, in a politics conversation. Someone said, though, the politics are different when it comes to President Obama. That doesn't have the record and the capital that President Clinton had when it came to the government shutdowns in 95 and 96, and so therefore Clinton was not blamed back then.
There are a few dynamics, I think, that are different here. One of them is that you don't have Newt Gingrich, who himself became the issue. He talked about the brinksmanship. He talked about how he wanted to shut down the federal government. He indicated he was shutting down the federal government because he was pushed to the back of Air Force One, looking very petty. And so Republicans lost on that score. John Boehner has very, very carefully made sure not to talk about shutting down the federal government, not to be seen as the person pushing things in that direction. I think that's helpful to Republicans. I think the mood of the country has changed, particularly with regard to spending. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. I think it's much more palatable now to talk about cutting spending regardless of what the individual cuts are than it was back then. I think the Republicans were elected on a promise to cut spending. And I also think there's an issue for Democrats here, which is their caucuses in the House and Senate are not unified on this, and particularly in the Senate. So there are Democrats, 23 seats on the Democratic side that are open in the next election in 2012, and a lot of those Democrats want to vote for spending cuts. They don't want to be seen on the wrong side of that issue. So when the House sends over a bill with spending cuts in it, you're going to see Harry Reid's caucus, his Democratic caucus, where he has, you know, continues to have a majority, but not a very large one. You're going to see him losing votes, not able to keep up with the promises that he wants to make to keep spending where it is. And we saw that just in this debate on the 2-week CR. The first thing Senate Republicans said is, there's no way we're doing this 2-week bill. You know,
Senate Democrats?
Senate Democrats said we're not going to do this 2-week bill. A week ago, when Republicans put it out, we're not going to do it. It's a prorated version of the $61 billion we don't want to cut, and nobody's fooled by it. A week later, they're going to pop it right through the Senate in about 15 minutes at 11 o'clock, and it's going on as the president. And I think a big reason for that is that Harry Reid just doesn't have the support of his caucus to maintain that spending freeze line.
And that vote will take place, as Jonathan said, 11 a.m. on C-SPAN 2. We're expecting that vote around then in the Senate, a 2-week extension to keep the government running through March 18th. The vote, let's talk about the vote in the House, though. Yesterday, 335 Democrats and Republicans voted for this extension. Only 91 voted against. It was about 83, I think, Democrats that voted against it. And the Democratic leadership was split. Steny Hoyer voted for it. Nancy Pelosi voted against it.
Well, I think that speaks to their divisions, their personal divisions. I think Nancy Pelosi is certainly somebody who comes from the left of her caucus, always has been. The position for people on the left was that this kind of a spending cut is too much. And the position for those in the center, and I think Steny Hoyer, being someone who represents a lot of federal employees, has been to both to keep the government funded and to cut spending. It's what John Boehner is saying, and I think you'll see a lot of House Democrats, when faced with voting against continuing the operations of the government, are not going to want to do that. 331 votes, that's more than 3/4 of the House. It's a pretty convincing tally.
Let's go to Jim, a Republican in Huntsville, Alabama. Morning.
Good morning. Actually, my comment was that your reporter, I believe, equated not increasing the debt ceiling to deflating or to defaulting on the national debt. And I don't believe that's correct. I believe it just means that we wouldn't authorize any new borrowing.
Well, I mean, the caller's right to an extent. It means we're not authorizing new borrowing, but because of so many things that are on autopilot with borrowing, it's not likely that you'll see a congressional action that would cut spending and or raise taxes enough to prevent hitting that ceiling at the point we're at now. Between now and when we would hit that ceiling, you could make small adjustments to sort of carry it forward, but ultimately we're sort of on autopilot here with a lot of programs that we can't defund in the short term to avoid hitting that ceiling. So if it's going to run out, if we're going to hit that ceiling at the end of May, Congress can figure out a way to extend it for with cuts, you know, for a couple months or something, but not have like a sort of real comprehensive solution.
Alicia is a Democrat in Michiana, West Virginia. You're on the air.
Yes, I was wondering, in the past, the government cuts has affected the economy, such as jobs and everything. And I was wondering if the government shutdowns in this previous year, if it will affect people who draw Social Security or are on government housing programs.
It really depends from program to program. In the case of Social Security, the checks are actually automated. You really don't administration will be limited by which
passed. One Secretary LaHood told state highway and transportation officials meeting in Washington today that Congress needs to enact a larger surface transportation reauthorization bill this year before it becomes mired in electoral politics, or it's unlikely to get done until after the 2012 elections. That's from Congressional Quarterly. Looking ahead, several federal department heads will be on Capitol Hill tomorrow to explain their budget requests. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano goes before the House Homeland Security Committee in the morning at 9:30 Eastern. She's asking for an increase of just under 1%. And Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius explains her department's $42 billion budget request for next year, about $1 billion less than the previous budget. Her testimony also begins at 9:30 Eastern. You can see both of those hearings live on our website, cspan.org.
On this vote, the yeas are 421, the nays are 4. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
I am well, Frank. So you The House will be in order. I hit the House will be in order. Members could please remove their conversations from the floor. The House will be in order. The chair is prepared to entertain 1-minute requests. Objection. The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to recognize a great South Florida organization, Women of Tomorrow. This month, Women of Tomorrow will hold its annual gala celebrating 10 years of making a difference in the lives of young women. Women of Tomorrow was founded in 1997 by South Florida journalist Jennifer Volpe and Telemundo president Don Brown. Their goal was to help at-risk young women live up to their full potential. The result has been a truly unique organization that pairs accomplished professional women with small groups of at-risk teenage girls in high schools. The mentors come from varied backgrounds, and they are lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs, and public servants. They show their mentees that anything is possible and nothing is out of their reach. So congratulations, Women of Tomorrow, on 10 amazing years, and I know that the next 10 will be even better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time.
Woman yields back. Purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of rhetoric one hears in the House about what the American public wants or what the American public thinks. Well, this week, survey research came out commissioned by the Public Broadcasting System and conducted by a bipartisan survey research team from Hart Research and American Viewpoint that is powerful evidence that while Americans are concerned about the budget and budget deficits, public broadcasting is a higher priority. Support for public broadcasting transcends party affiliation. More than 2/3 of all voters oppose elimination of federal funding for public broadcasting as approved by my Republican friends. What is most interesting, nearly 8 in 10 voters believe that PBS should receive the same amount of government funding or more than it currently receives. It's not just Democrats. 92% favor the same amount or more. It's not just independents. 75% favor the same amount or more. 2/3 of the Republicans favor the same or more money for public broadcasting. There's still time to climb off the ledge. The Senate should stand tall, and the House should reverse itself.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute without objection.
My constituents are perplexed with Washington, Mr. Speaker. Economists have warned and the public demands Washington tighten its belt. Despite this year's $1.6 trillion deficit, the President still refuses to change course and reduce spending. President Obama created the Bipartisan National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform by executive order. The Commission's mission, according to the executive order, was to, quote, to identify policies to improve fiscal situation in the medium term and to achieve fiscal sustainability over the long run. Unfortunately, the President's FY 2012 budget ignores every essential observation and proposal advanced by the Commission, doubles debt held by the public by the end of its term, while adding on $13 trillion in new debt. Erskine Bowles, the Democratic chairman of the Fiscal Commission, stated, the White House budget goes nowhere near where they will have to go to restore our fiscal nightmare. Mr. Speaker, my constituents and I agree. Despite the need to rein in our runaway debt, the President's budget is more of the same. It's time we take the economists and our constituents seriously and get serious on the debt, and I ask my colleagues to join me in heeding their call. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent here because I rise today to shed light on a very serious problem, skyrocketing gasoline prices. In the Capital District of New York, the prices at the pump today average about $3.50 per gallon. Nationally, the average price is $3.38 per gallon, and it continues to rise. Due to the continued conflict in North Africa and the Middle East, oil is over $100 per barrel. There appears to be no end in sight. For every $10 per barrel rise in the price of oil, America sends an additional $40 billion overseas yearly. How can we expect to turn around our economy and create jobs when we are sending this much money to our enemies? Plain and simple, we must start thinking outside the barrel to create jobs and protect our national security. We, as Americans, are better than the ancient fuel that we put into our vehicles. Using 19th and 20th century oil subsidies in this 21st century is outdated and foolish. We are literally giving away hard-earned taxpayer money to big oil companies that are setting record profits. What do we get in return? Sticker shock at the pump. Mr. Speaker, this is unfair to hard-working Americans that play by the rules. We deserve better. Let's stop the sticker shock.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last Thursday was just a normal day in Houston, Texas. 7 families left their babies at Jackie's Child Care and went on to work just as they did every day. A daycare is supposed to be a place where parents trust caregivers with the safety of their kids. After all, that is what they are supposed to do, keep children safe. The owner, however, Jessica Tata, left the children by themselves and carelessly drove off to Target. Meanwhile, the pot of oil she had left on the electric stove caught fire and those 7 babies burned in a massive fire. Elizabeth Koja, Kendall Stafford, Elias Castillo, and Samara Dickinson all burned to death, and they were all under the age of 3. It took several days for the authorities to get their act together to file charges. Meanwhile, Tata was able to flee to Nigeria. And as the good book says, the guilty fleeth when no one pursueth. There should be no question in any person's mind that Jessica Tata should be held responsible for this crime. So the long arm of the law ought to capture her, return her to Texas, and let a jury decide what to do with that baby killer, because justice is what we do, and that's just the way it is.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition for Mississippi?
Mr. Speaker, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last week while most of us were working from our districts, a newspaper article entitled Combat Troops to Get Gay Sensitivity Training was published. The article explains how our combat forces on the front lines in Afghanistan will soon be required to take a time out from their mission to be forced to participate in the Pentagon's homosexual sensitivity training regimen. I still maintain the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell will harm recruitment, retention, and readiness. But regardless of your opinion on that issue, it is remarkable that the courageous men and women that have voluntarily put themselves in harm's way are being subjected to such insane distractions while the war rages on around them.
Our nation is at war against an enemy that wants nothing more than the complete destruction of our way of life. For the President and the Pentagon to dangerously distract the attention of our troops and forward operating bases away from the enemy and toward homosexual sensitivity training is outrageous. To the men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces, I pray to God that you all return home to your families safe and sound. I, for one, believe in your mission and want to win the war on terror, because we have certainly lost a war of common sense. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad my colleague came up to speak to talk about the high energy prices. We have consistently tried on this side of the aisle to talk about an all-of-the-above energy strategy. We are independent on electricity generation, but we are held captive to imported crude oil. So what does that mean? That means we are stuck in a one-fuel technology, and in an all-of-the-above energy strategy, we envision a world where you go to a filling station and you have a fuel competing. You have coal to liquid technologies, you have liquid fuel by natural gas, you have renewable fuels by biomass, all these issues to help decrease our reliance on imported crude oil. We have the opportunity for oil sand pipeline from Canada. We really can be independent on our energy needs based upon North American energy resources. We have to be about that. For the administration to celebrate opening up one permit in the Gulf Coast is a joke. We ought to get our drilling rigs back operating. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Further 1 minute requests? Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Christensen, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I wanted to thank the Democratic leadership for giving the Congressional Black Caucus this time to stand in solidarity with our sisters and brothers in Wisconsin, as well as those in Ohio and Indiana, and anywhere the rights of workers are being trampled upon. The similarities in what is going on here in the nation's capital and the Wisconsin capital are not only striking, but it's the kind of coordinated attack against working men and women that we have become accustomed to seeing from Republican legislators and governors. I don't understand why Governor Walker can't take yes for an answer. The unions have agreed to most, if not all, of the concessions he asked for, but rightly they will not and should not give up their right to collective bargaining. No one knows better than the African American community what unions have done to lift people out of poverty, to ensure them a decent job with decent wages and protections in the workplace. But not only African Americans, but all Americans have benefited from the work of our labor unions. What Governor Walker is doing is not about balancing a budget or reducing a deficit any more than the cuts in spending up here are. It's about busting unions and thus making it possible for companies to run ramshot over workers' rights, a circumstance no one in this country should ever allow us to go back to. And for the life of me, I can't understand what Republicans have against children. Or is it just poor and middle-class children? The governor and his allies in the state legislature would rather take teachers out of the classroom, killing jobs, and would rather jeopardize the education of Wisconsin's children than raise property taxes just a little bit to help cover the cost of providing a quality education, even after the teachers have agreed to give in on some of their health and pension benefits negotiated in their contracts. In fact, it's my understanding that just like the Republicans insisted on tax cuts for the wealthy who did not need it, here, before anything could be done to help struggling families, Governor Walker also enacted tax cuts as soon as he came into office. The spending cuts, as I understand it, would not have been necessary in Wisconsin if those tax cuts were not enacted, and the devastating cuts in health care, education, community economic development, and job creation programs, in homeland security and public safety would not be needed here if we had not given the wealthy a tax giveaway in December. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield such time as she might consume to the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, who's always here standing for the rights of workers, for the rights of children, for the rights of people everywhere, Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and let me thank the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands for once again coming to the floor, organizing us to make sure that we sound the alarm, to make sure that we put out the facts about what is taking place. Tonight, of course, we're talking about the union-busting efforts of Governor Walker in Wisconsin. So thank you, Congresswoman Christensen, for your leadership and your tireless work. I am pleased to participate in the special order tonight as we provide some perspective about the importance of preserving and respecting the process of collective bargaining and supporting the rights of public employees to protect union benefits won by virtue of the blood, sweat, and tears of unionized workers. We are talking about the implications of the union-busting efforts undertaken by Wisconsin Governor Walker. But the reality is there is a sweeping anti-union sentiment overtaking our nation, and public employees who are union workers are being used as scapegoats to balance state budgets. This practice is not only wrong, it is cruel, and it's calculated. Let's take a look at the facts. In Wisconsin, for example, Governor Walker is attempting to ram through legislation that cuts state employee benefits and strips unions of their collective bargaining rights by allowing them to bargain only on wages, keeping benefits and other issues off the table, severely limiting unions, say, on hiring, firing, assignments, and other work rules. The governor appears ready to rush through radical changes that would take away rights from workers without making any effort to talk to those workers, much less negotiate a fair agreement with them. Governor Walker is calling public employee unions unreasonable, but his administration has made absolutely no effort to work with or even contact any of the unions he is attacking. He is demonizing public employees protesting at the Capitol. That's why 74% of Wisconsin residents oppose oppose this and the Republicans' bill to take away these rights from struggling, middle-income, middle-class residents of Wisconsin. His proposals are an affront to all workers. When he says that state employees should contribute more, all he is really saying is that they should accept massive cuts in salary without being offered a seat at the negotiating table. And we're not talking about huge salaries. This is not about budgeting. This is about union workers in the state and across the country, but it only leads to stalled economic growth and the slashing of jobs. The process of collective bargaining has led to the rise of the middle class. It's a fair process that allows employers to sit at the table and craft an agreement that serves both parties. It's a fundamentally American process. It's a democratic process. Yet Governor Walker, may I have an additional minute?
Would the gentlelady suspend?
I didn't give you time.
Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I am directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives a message in writing.
Thank you, ma'am.
The gentlelady from California may proceed.
Thank you very much. This process of collective bargaining, as I said earlier, has led to the rise of the middle class. It's really an American process. It's a democratic process. Yet Governor Walker is bent on undermining decades of hard-earned concessions won by organized labor and its membership. If the governor is successful in his union-busting efforts, we will see further assaults on this around the country on union workers and in other states that are really experiencing budgetary woes. So in response to Governor Walker's actions, elected officials, and we're very proud and stand in solidarity with the elected officials in Wisconsin to protest his actions. Public employees have shown that they are serious about balancing the budget by agreeing to Governor Walker's pension and health care requests, concessions that the governor himself says will solve the budget challenge. But still, it seems like this is not enough. The governor's efforts are denying the rights of tax-paying nurses, educators, emergency response workers, all people who, you know, probably are our next-door neighbors. We all know public employees who this will hurt. These are union workers who need and should have a voice. At the same time, he's pressing for a bill that will do nothing to fix the budget. This bill will shatter relationships among educators and school leaders, undermining current innovations around teacher compensation, evaluation, and improvement. It will really have a chilling effect on teacher recruitment and sends a terrible message about the value of public service. Mr. Speaker, there are ominous signs on the horizon that reflect a growing sentiment by governors who seem bent on union-busting, anti-democratic initiatives to really undo long-standing collective bargaining agreements. Union workers and public employees are being used as scapegoats to balance the budget. Teachers, nurses, police, firemen, and others who perform their jobs dutifully are being treated shabbily by this governor, and those who share his union-busting and anti-collective bargaining philosophy. I hope that cooler heads prevail, and I urge the governor to pull the state back from this radical governmental overreach. And I see my colleague from Wisconsin, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, will be with us, and I just want to say to Congresswoman Moore that my constituents in the 9th Congressional District stand in solidarity with you and with all of those bold and brave leaders who have left the state, and also on behalf of all of the union workers and all of those who have come to the Capitol to say enough is enough. So thank you, Congresswoman Moore, for your leadership. Thank you, Congresswoman Christensen.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee, and thank you for your leadership. And we have a number of women leaders here, and I'd like to now yield to the gentlelady. No, she's going to go last. To the gentlelady from Maryland, who has been a leader on many issues, including during the health care reform debate, to make sure that those who were insured were protected. Congresswoman Donna Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Congresswoman Christensen. I'm here today because I look at the fight and the struggle of the workers in Wisconsin, the public sector workers, as connected, the dots connected to the struggles of workers across this country. For 20 years, we've seen an erosion of the organized labor force, the organized workforce. And it isn't just the private sector workers who've lost over these 20 years. It's also our public sector workers, and this is the fight in which we're engaged now, Mr. Speaker. The union movement and collective bargaining have brought us minimum wages, not for our organized workers, but for those of us who are not organized, has brought us decent workplaces, safe working conditions, health care, insurance, disability, vacation, family and medical leave, and the list goes on and on. And so I want to step back in our history a little bit, Mr. Speaker, and take a look at what's happened to the organized workforce. Jobs shipped across this outside of this country for private sector workers, a depletion of the organized workforce. We've also seen a circumstance where our state and municipal employees have done everything that we've asked them to do, even in a tough economy, in saying that they will make concessions, as all workers have in this economy, because they believe in holding the line for all of their workers so that people will not have to lose jobs, but they've taken furloughs, they've taken pay freezes, they've taken cuts in benefits. And even in Wisconsin, we know that the workforce there, the public sector workers, have given on all of those money issues. And so we have to ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, what is at the bottom of this? And what's at the bottom of this, in my view, Mr. Speaker, is that this is about busting up unions. We've started with the private sector workers. We've put a kibosh on the ability of all of our workers to organize and to bargain for themselves. And now we're with public sector workers. And so I think that this is a race to the bottom, Mr. Speaker. It's a race to the bottom for the American worker. And so the struggle for workers in Wisconsin is a struggle for all workers. When a worker is asked to give up $50 a month in in contributions to a pension plan or $100 a month. Let's think about what that means for that family. That $50 or $100 is the difference between having oatmeal and cereal and milk and eggs and paying the utilities every month. That's what $50 or $100 means. It's not something that's just thrown away. And so, Mr. Speaker, I stand here with my colleagues in deep solidarity with the workers, the public sector workers of Wisconsin, because I know that as sure as their struggle goes, the struggle with all workers goes across the country. And we have to link those fights. We have to end this decades-long race to the bottom, Mr. Speaker. We're being asked to look at trade agreements where we trade away private sector jobs, our public sector workers, our teachers, our firefighters, our law enforcement, people who take care of our children on a day-to-day basis. We're saying to them, you're not valued. You're not worth enough even in this economy. And I don't think that that is the message that the American people want to send. And, Mr. Speaker, clearly the polls show that across this country, a vast majority, an overwhelming majority, upwards of 60% of the American public believes in the right to bargain collectively. And what is collective bargaining? Collective bargaining is sitting around at a table, having a fair shake, getting a fair deal, and dealing as equal partners. And let's look at what's happened in Wisconsin and across this country. Contracts were struck. Now, if a contract were made in the private sector and one of the parties wanted to renege on that contract, the other party would probably take them to court. They would be in litigation. And yet here in Wisconsin and across this country, workers are being asked every day. They're being told every day that the other person who is on the other side of an equal bargaining table is going to renege on a contract. There is something that is deeply anti-democratic about that. And so I'm here, Mr. Speaker, because public sector workers in Wisconsin deserve our solidarity. And as a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, we know deeply of the struggle for freedom and for justice. And we know an injustice when we see it. And we're witnessing what looks to be an injustice in Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana and perpetrated all across this country when it comes to the rights of workers and the ability to organize and the ability to bargain collectively for a decent workplace, for decent wages, and for the ability to take care of one's family and oneself. And we stand toe-to-toe, shoulder-to-shoulder, and union card to union card with our public sector workers and with all workers across this country who deserve not a race to the bottom, Mr. Speaker, but a race to the top. And with that, I would yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Edwards, and thank you for those really strong words to encourage our union members in Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana and wherever else unions are under attack. We appreciate your being here with us this evening and for reassuring those workers that you and the Congressional Black Caucus are standing firmly with them. At this time, I'd like to yield such time as she might consume to the gentlelady from Ohio, former mayor, also a strong fighter for children, for the poor, and for the underserved, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge.
Thank you so very much. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my strong opposition to attempts by the Republican governor of Wisconsin and the Republican governor of the state of Ohio, from which I hail, to undermine collective bargaining for public employees. In my state, Ohio Senate Bill 5 is a measure currently under consideration by the Ohio General Assembly that would strip state workers of their collective bargaining rights. Today, this bill was approved by the Senate's Insurance, Commerce, and Labor Committee. It now moves to the state Senate floor for a final vote, which could begin as early as today. This vote comes after Ohio state and local union workers gathered in protest on yesterday at the State House. Just yesterday, more than 8,500 people surrounded the State House to express their disapproval. I firmly support the right of public employees to collectively negotiate. Who are we as a nation when we tell our firefighters, our police officers, and other public protectors that they don't deserve a say in their working conditions? Does a teacher's experience or education have no economic value? Ohio's proposed legislation is less about fiscal responsibility than it is an overt political attack on public workers who speak with a collective voice. As labor battles erupt in state capitals across this country, a majority of Americans say they oppose efforts to weaken the collective bargaining rights of public employees. I want to join with my colleagues today to just talk a bit about what is happening not just in Wisconsin, although we are here today because of all that is going on in Wisconsin. And I would now yield back to our chair so that we may discuss this in another forum.
Certainly, and to begin that, and before we begin that, I'd like to just ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to enter extraneous material in the matter under discussion this evening.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. And to begin this dialogue, I'd like to turn now to the gentlelady from Wisconsin who feels it and who knows it, Gwen Moore.
Well, thank you so much for yielding, and thank you, Mr. Chair, during this hour. I want to thank the Congressional Black Caucus members and the women of the Congressional Black Caucus for joining me here today. The Congressional Black Caucus has always been known as the conscience of the Congress because we understand that budgets and these initiatives to break the collective bargaining agreements are being presented to us in the context of a budget. And we all know that budgets are not about numbers. And this is proof of that. It's about values. And where you place your money is where you place your heart. And so I'd like to talk about the situation in Wisconsin. You know, there are a few things that have been misinformation, just let me say that, around this budget. And I appreciate the fact that we have you know, a physician here with us this evening who is an expert on the Medicaid program. We have an attorney here with the gentlelady from Ohio, and we have the gentlelady from Maryland who is an expert on all kinds of programs that deal with family issues. And so I need you to help me sort out some of the things that have been misinformation and disinformation in this campaign. Let me say that I once served on the Joint Committee on Finance and put the budget together as a state senator in the Wisconsin legislature. And so I know that the opening balance to the budget was a $121 million surplus. Now, that's not a lot of money when you consider that $65 million is required for a statutory minimum balance in the account. But it left a cushion of $54 million in those accounts. Nothing like the $3.6 billion deficit that the governor likes to present as his raison d'etre for these draconian cuts in collective bargaining. Now, what is a structural deficit? A structural deficit simply is the difference between what the agencies of the government request and what the governor provides. And so when is the last time the agencies have gotten every dime that they've asked for? Never. So it's a phony structural deficit. But given the fact that our governor, just like any governor, has budget challenges, I respect the fact that, you know, sometimes you have to make unpleasant cuts. So what the governor proposed to do was to realize savings by requiring that state employees, except for the police and fire and state troopers, pay 5.8% of their pension funds and a little over 12% of their health care funds. and to make those contributions, generating $725 million in savings. Miraculously, the unions agreed to do that. But the governor said no. No, I do not want to negotiate with you. I want to strip you of your rights to collective bargain. And the exact words of the bill were that they were prohibited from bargaining from anything related to their conditions of employment. So I'd like to, I was wondering if the gentlelady from Ohio would yield about what that kind of jargon, legalistic, that they are unable to negotiate on any conditions of employment except for the 1% wage within the Consumer Price Index.
Let me just say to you, and I thank you for